There is something strange about Ice Age humans. We know they could cross enormous distances, survive brutal winters, hunt dangerous animals, and bury their dead with objects they had spent hours making. But there is one thing we almost never find: a love story. No ancient diary, no message scratched into bone saying, "I chose you." And yet, somehow, these people raised children, stayed together, cared for one another, and built lives in a world where simply surviving another winter was an achievement. So how did they fall in love? At first, the obvious answer seems almost too simple. They probably met someone in their small community. They spent time together. They had children. And eventually they became partners. That sounds reasonable. But there is a problem. We are imagining Ice Age relationships using modern assumptions. And once we look closer, the evidence starts telling a stranger story. Imagine the world around 30,000 years ago. A small group is moving across a frozen landscape. The wind is cutting through animal skins. There are no houses in the modern sense, no restaurants, no private bedrooms, no dating apps, and almost nowhere to be alone. Your entire life depends on other people. Someone has to find food. Someone has to maintain the fire. Someone has to prepare hides. Someone has to watch the children. Someone has to notice when another person is injured or sick. In that world, choosing a partner wasn't just about attraction. Could affect whether you survived. But that still doesn't tell us whether they actually fell in love. So we need a clue. And one of the most remarkable clues comes from a place called Sunghir, in what is now Russia. Around 34,000 years ago, people were buried there. And one burial in particular is astonishing. A man had been placed in the ground wearing thousands of tiny ivory beads. The beads had probably been attached to clothing that disappeared thousands of years ago. There were also carefully made ivory objects and other personal possessions. Someone had invested an enormous amount of time in preparing this person's body. That tells us something important. These people didn't simply die and disappear. Their relationships with the dead mattered. But perhaps this was just ritual. Maybe it tells us nothing about love. So we look elsewhere, and things become even more complicated. At Sunghir, two young individuals were buried together in an extraordinary double grave. Their bodies were positioned carefully. Their burial was accompanied by an enormous number of objects. For a moment, it is tempting to imagine a tragic prehistoric love story. Two young people, one grave, thousands of years ago, but archaeology refuses to give us the easy answer. They may have been related. They may have had a special social status. They may have died around the same time for reasons we cannot know. We cannot simply call them lovers. And that's the frustrating part. The evidence keeps showing us that Ice Age people cared deeply about one another. But it refuses to tell us exactly why. Then another clue appears. And this one changes the question completely. Ancient DNA has shown that different human groups were not living in complete isolation. Neanderthals and modern humans interbred. Denisovans and the ancestors of some modern populations did too. These encounters happened many thousands of years ago, which means that somewhere in the Ice Age, two people from very different human populations met. And one of them didn't simply walk away. They had children. Their descendants survived. Their DNA is still inside living humans today. But again, we have to be careful. Interbreeding does not automatically mean romance. It could have happened through many kinds of relationships: consent, coercion, social exchange, migration, or something else entirely. The DNA tells us that people connected, cannot tell us what they felt. So maybe we are asking the wrong question. Maybe Ice Age love wasn't about finding the one. Maybe the bigger mystery is how strong human attachment could become when survival depended on cooperation. Consider what happens when someone becomes injured. At Shanidar Cave, Neanderthal remains have suggested that at least some individuals survived serious injuries and disabilities that would have made independent survival difficult. Someone had to help. Someone had to share food. Someone had to tolerate the slower pace of an injured member of the group. That isn't proof of romantic love, but it is evidence of something powerful. Human beings were capable of investing resources in people who could not immediately repay them. And that matters, because love doesn't leave behind a skeleton, but behavior can leave traces. A carefully prepared burial, a child protected after death, an injured person surviving long enough to heal, thousands of beads painstakingly made and placed with a body. These are not love letters. They're something more frustrating. They're clues. And perhaps the strongest clue comes from something we still do today. Children. An Ice Age child wasn't simply born into a world of cold landscapes and predators. They required years of care. Food had to be shared. Protection had to be provided. Knowledge had to be taught. And because human children grow slowly, survival depended on relationships that lasted far beyond birth. This creates a fascinating possibility. Maybe romantic love did not evolve as some separate luxury added after humans had solved survival. Maybe attachment, cooperation, parental care, and pair bonding were deeply connected from the beginning. But even that isn't the whole story, because humans don't only form bonds with partners. We form bonds with siblings, friends, children, parents, entire communities. An Ice Age life may have depended on all of them. So imagine that small group again. The fire is burning. Outside, the temperature is falling. Someone returns from a hunt. Someone else is preparing food. A child is sleeping. And across the fire, one person looks toward another. We will probably never know what that look meant. Archaeology cannot recover a prehistoric kiss. Cannot tell us who made someone laugh. Cannot tell us whose absence made another person feel the world become smaller. But it can show us something remarkably close. These people kept choosing one another. They cared for the vulnerable. They buried the dead. They carried relationships across generations. And eventually, some of those relationships became part of us. So, did Ice Age humans fall in love? Almost certainly, in some form. But the evidence cannot tell us whether their love looked exactly like ours. And that's the real twist. We began by asking how Ice Age humans found romance in a frozen world. But perhaps romance was never the mystery. The mystery is why humans became creatures for whom another person's existence could matter enough to change what they did. That ability may be far older than civilization, older than cities, older than writing, older than almost everything we associate with being human. The Ice Age didn't just test whether humans could survive alone. It revealed something more important. We were never really built to